Of Blackbirds in the Sky. This is her latest book out this week. Talks all about the Tulsa Race Massacre, which even 100 years later, we're still feeling the effects of it today. First of all, I want to go ahead and ask you, growing up in Missouri, Tulsa was only a couple of hours away from you. How did this affect you and shape the author and the person that you are today?
Sure. So, I didn't know much about the history of Tulsa growing up, but it turns out, a lot of that history was quite similar to where I grew up in Southwest Missouri. I grew up in a predominantly white town. I just sort of never questioned why it was so white. And, it was like 3% Black when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. And then as I, got older and started looking into some of the history, and some of that history was being printed in my hometown newspaper, I understood, that there was a lot of like racial violence there from decades before, I was even born. And a lot of that actually shaped the town that I grew up in.
Now, even this, in the past week, some of the survivors and descendants are in court, still trying to get justice from this. So this isn't something that like read what happened 100 years ago. I mean, we're still feeling the effects of everything that happened today.
We are. Yeah, I was really shocked when I was doing, I have a chapter on the aftermath in the book. So sort of everything that's happened after the massacre, and sort of the new developments like digging for mass graves, and, some of the survivors and descendants of the victims and survivors, taking the case to court. And I'm just, really proud of everyone who has stuck to it and said, we are going to try to gain the justice that was denied to us, 100 years ago, and all of the decades since then, when the massacre has been brought up and tried to, go to court and all of that. So it's definitely a long, ongoing process.
One of the parts you talk about in one of the central parts of the book is trying to heal. This is one part of history that we need to heal from, but there's so many things in the world that people need to heal from. How did that become a subject of the book? And, what are some of the things that you talk about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, writing about the healing is just acknowledging what happened. And I think for so many people, that's the most important thing, is to say that this thing happened, because for so many years, Oklahoma officials, Tulsa officials just refused to talk about it. And, newspapers wouldn't write about it, all of that. So I think healing is acknowledgement, and also, some type of reparation. So a state legislature put together a commission to sort of understand what happened, how to move forward. And one of those suggestions was like a long list of reparations. And some of those, very few of those have been met. Some of them have, but I think that's another way to move toward healing. It's just acknowledgement, reparations, just trying to make things as right as possible, the digging for mass graves, and actually, trying to unearth some of that, and just give people some closure around something that happened over a century ago.
Now, a lot of your previous work, you're geared towards young adults and towards teen readers. Do you suggest maybe, some of those people who pick up that book to have conversations with their family members or their parents? Because this is going to be heavy material for some, a young adult to have to, carry all by themselves.
Absolutely. Yes. So, it's definitely a book geared toward younger readers with them in mind. But, I hope that anyone who reads it can pick it up and learn a little bit of something that they didn't learn in school, whether it's someone my age, someone older than me. I think there's so much that just was not taught in school around American schools, for the last century. So I think everyone has something to learn from it, and that it would be, a really great book for kids and parents and other family members to just read all together and discuss, and see how some of those things that in the past might affect them today and affect where they live, or if not them, other people they know. I think that the book is really ripe for all kinds of conversations.
I mean, especially if this wasn't taught in schools, which, 99% of the times it wasn't, the parents could also learn something as well too. And it'd probably do them a lot of good too, to be able to discuss this as well too with the younger generation.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was surprised by how much I learned, and, I've been out of school for quite a while now. So yeah, it was pretty enlightening to me. So I hope that other people will find that to be the case too.
I do want to talk a little bit about your support for local local book retailers, 57th Street Books and Anderson Bookshop in the Chicagoland area. You both have signed copies. What does it mean to you as an author to support these local retailers?
Oh, it's everything. I grew up in a town that did not have any independent bookstores when I was growing up, and, only has one today, I think, that recently opened. And I just know how important that is. The bookstore, you go to a new city. One of the things you love to do, at least for me as a big reader and a writer, is to go check out their bookstores and see kind of what the local culture is, see what is being recommended and read in different cities and what those booksellers love. I just find it to be such a welcoming, supportive community. And I just feel really lucky as a writer to have so many bookstores around the country that are supporting authors like me.
Oh, exactly. And then one of the ones that we support as well too is Pointe. That's one of your previous books here. But since we are in Chicago, the story is set in Chicagoland. Talk a little bit about the story. Someone who might be watching this who may want to go back and read that book.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for bringing that up. So that's my debut novel. It's called Pointe. It is set in a fictional suburb outside of Chicago, where I lived while I was writing it for a few years. And it's about a young ballet dancer whose best friend was kidnapped when they were 13. The novel starts 4 years later when they're 17, and he has returned. And you do not know, but she's freaking out. She's happy that he's back, but there's another reason that she's freaking out. And you find out that she had something to do with his abduction all those years ago.
I want to pick up that book right now. That was the perfect sell for that right there. So you said you were up in Chicago writing the book. How long were you here, and where were you at?
Yeah, I was there from it was actually October 2007 to maybe October 2011. It was like right around 4 years. I actually lived on the north side. So I lived in North Center for 1 year, and then I lived in Ravenswood for the next 3 years. So that was a pretty interesting time. I definitely learned about winters there. There was a big blizzard the same year that I left. I was just like, I have to go. But it's a beautiful city. I really enjoy going back to visit whenever I get the chance.
Lots of wonderful restaurants, a lot of nice little walking neighborhoods right there in North Center and in Ravenswood as well too. Your time in Chicago, how do you think that shaped you as an author, or moving forward? How do you look back at that time and how you might create some of your future work?
Yeah, that time in Chicago was actually very integral, I think, to my career and just to my practice as a writer. I was working at the time at a financial company, and I just was a business writer. So I was writing all the time, 8 hours a day, very like regimented writing also. Like we could not even use contractions in the writing. So it really trained me in a way that I wasn't expecting. And then I would go home and work on my fiction. So I was just writing constantly while I was there. And it was really good for my motivation and just sort of for my career. Then I learned what I would sort of have to do when working with editors also. So it was really helpful. And I always say that I would not be the same writer that I am today if I had not spent those 4 years in Chicago.
As far as readers reaching out to you on social media, because a lot of people were at home, picking up those books that maybe they had not read or got more into reading over the pandemic, and what your books meant to them. Did you have a lot of people reach out to you over social media to share those thoughts with you?
Yeah, I do. And it's really nice to hear from people. Instagram is sort of the place that I never expected to be really big into books, but there's like this whole community they call Bookstagram, and they take these gorgeous pictures of the books, and it's just really beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. But also they have really nice, reviews that they write sometimes. And the fact that I can connect with a reader, maybe across the country or even across the world, and not know when they're reading my book, and not knowing that they're getting out of it, everything that I wanted them to get out of it and more, is just really exciting to see, especially when they pick up older titles of mine, kind of focus on the new books, but there are people picking up books all the time. So that's really exciting to hear from readers.
Oh, exactly. And Pointe, set in the Chicagoland area, definitely one of our first novels we definitely want to go ahead and pick up. This was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Blackbirds in the Sky in stores now. Local retailers, check out her Instagram page for all the local places you can go ahead and buy them across the country, and in the Chicagoland area, Anderson's Bookshop and 57th Street Books.